Hi, folks. With Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio radio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about why uniquely European societies focused on innovation to create wealth rather than just the historical staples of land, labour, and just stealing what the other guys have got. There was, I mean, we can talk about sophistication and various things here, but there's a certain, I mean, it's almost evolutionary, I think, in terms of the wide societies of Western and Northwest or Europe, Western Europe, I guess generally. Where the proportion of wealth from innovation and invention began to exceed the proportion of wealth that came from just straight, agricultural production, having cheap serf labor, working the land, or again stealing what the other guys got. So this transition, it's an evolutionary transition. It was epoch marking in the sense, and I wonder whether we're going through another epoch. Almost like de-innovation at the moment, but sticking with this innovation thing, I've mentioned a number of times. There are some, we live sort of adjacent to a forest, so there's a lot of a shitload of various creatures that we see that even come onto the back deck and are just around the garden and so on. And if I look at the difference in behaviour between the most advanced species, as in the one that's most recently evolved, to one that's been around for many millions of years more, and so evolved much earlier, look at the difference in behaviours and the difference in what appears to be intelligence and problem solving and adaptation to situations. One of them has a view that if you deny another creature the resources, the food in this case, if you deny them food, then that's an achievement in its own right, and you don't need to do anything more. Just deny them the resources. That's all that matters. Whereas the more advanced creature will attempt to deny resources, but only insofar as they can capture those resources for themselves. So the idea is just stopping the other guy from having it. That's not good enough. We want those resources, and so it's stopping the other guy and getting them for yourself. So this is a very much a difference in attitude. It doesn't sound like much, but it is. And one species, prospers, and the other doesn't. One propagates, and they're everywhere you look, even in spite of only having geographically at least come into the area in the last 20 years. Whereas the other one's been, in the area for hundreds of years, thousands of years, millions of years. So also looking at how the two species, the adaptation capacity of the older, less evolved species, the adaptation capacity is quite small. They can do minor stuff, but the more recently evolved species, which clearly is a higher species in intelligence and organization and so on, they can adapt far more quickly and far more comprehensively. So there's a large bird that comes in, and talking about mainly birds at the moment, but the large bird that comes in and kind of grabs the food. So before that, initially when I first saw this happen, the larger bird simply pecked and chased away these highly evolved smaller ones. But within a matter of weeks, these evolved species had developed a process to scare off this bigger bird that could kill them with one peck. So they, one or two of them would go out front, just out of reach of the bird, to sort of goad it on, and others would then jump on its back and just harass it until in the end the bigger bird, again, that could kill these with one peck, just gave up. It was all too hard, too difficult. I'm out of here. And so these evolved species had developed, again, you could see the evolution of their thinking almost in close to real time. So when you get a more evolved species, there's the difference that you see. You can say, well, one's brighter than the other, or no, we're not allowed to say that, it's racism. But the reality is there right in front of you, again, watching it in real time. So and it's the same with people, certain groups of people can and do, whether you want to call them more highly evolved or whatever term you want to put to it, it doesn't really matter. One is capable of far more advanced, in general, far more advanced, innovative thinking than another. But also coming back to a primal difference here is that, say, the black tribes of Africa were, and also the tribes of India and most places that are third world still today, their basic view is if you can deny the resources of the other guy, then that's kind of all you need to do. You can steal whatever they've got, but then after you've consumed what you've just stolen, what do you then do afterwards? And there seems to be no thinking ahead on that. And you see that all around the third world. And I noticed this doing business traveling, that this was effectively their attitude. They just could not conceive of how invention and innovation will create new wealth. Their only concept was you've got to take what the other guy's got, because they just cannot conceive of a situation where there's anything more than just one pot of money, and you just got to get a bit of it. And if you can stop the other guy from getting it, that means you get a little bit more. And this was something that was prevalent in now, if you look at say even the irrigation systems that the ancient Egyptians had in place, and then you go to sub-Saharan Africa, then they didn't have even that level of sophistication in terms of irrigation systems across their big rivers. And some of those large African rivers were near some extremely fertile land that it was, when the white man started roaming around the length and breadth of Africa, they were stunned that there were, hundreds of thousands of acres of absolutely prime agricultural land. There was nothing on it. Nobody was farming it, or it'd be farmed seasonally in some sort of hunter-gatherer type thing. And they were in disbelief over this. Wow, all this land, same in North America. And this, of course, was turned to good use by Europeans that used large-scale farming, which drastically reduced the price of grains and other foods. It radically changed living standards in terms of the quality and quantity. Saharan Africans were, nearly 5,000 years behind the agricultural and in terms of irrigation, and so on. The agricultural practice of the ancient Egyptians, this seems astonishing. 5,000 years. Why were they more than 3,000 years behind in things like basic early Iron Age metallurgy that was being practiced in 700-800 BC, and yet even the standard of, say, metallurgy that the Zulus, who were in the overall scheme of things reasonably advanced, sub-Saharan tribes, very warlike, the standard of metallurgy that they had was still not as advanced as what had been happening 3,000 years ago, this sort of thing. So why was that? And if you look at the around the rest outside, if you like, of Western Europe, and you look at technical invention, innovation, there were bursts of it in China, quite overrated in my view, but nonetheless there were bursts of it. But you struggle to find. There was some early Arabic, especially around the big rivers, the Euphrates and the Tigris and the Nile and so on. There were clearly innovations there, not simply in agriculture, but in other things as well. But outside, in terms of modern technology and evolutionary cycles of technology and invention, innovation, it's almost a uniquely white Western gig. Now you can find exceptions if you look hard enough, but effectively it's a white Western gig, and this is something that caused an absolute revolution in wealth creation. Even in the 1500s, the trading, what was called the mercantile age, the trading age, say that the British or any other group would look at but for example, the Spanish gold and silver shipments coming from South America to Europe, and these were eyed, very jealously by a lot of nations, British included, and they would send raiding parties out, pirates in effect, to go and try and rip off this gold and silver if they possibly could, and even raiding the towns where warehouses of all sorts of stuff in South America would be. And there was mixed success on it, but Sir Francis Drake, for example, was a fairly big player in that during the Elizabethan age, and the English did okay out of that, actually, that level of piracy. But they weren't unique. There were pirates of all sorts around. This was before there were national navies that would chase down the pirates and bombard the pirate ports and safe harbours and so on, and before that. And so everyone was really having a go at the piracy things, whether it be the Moroccans and so on in the Barbary pirates thing from North Africa, or there were French pirates and Dutch pirates, the list went on, and Spanish pirates and so on. But as that mercantile age was sort of starting to fold into the late mercantile or indeed industrial age, then it started to change considerably, and invention and innovation were seem to be the ways of wealth. If you can make a machine that can do the job of 20 people, and remember these were in the times where populations were relatively small, certainly compared to today. So if you can produce a machine that does the work of 20 or 25 people, like a spinning jenny, or some of the newer technology, pumps for pumping water out of mines, mine shafts, that sort of thing, or any sort of production technique, then you change the whole concept of wealth and how it can be made. Then you're moving away from just straight grunt labour and land, and you're moving into technical expertise and capability and organisation and so on. So wealth starts to move to those who are best educated, best organised, most able to mobilise capital, and importantly, most able to share those ideas with others, who then add value to the original invention or innovation to create yet more wealth, more efficiency, and better organisational adaptation, and so on and so forth. So we really need to look at evolution in terms of I believe, in terms of those most capable of that level of organisation and invention, innovation, and not simply business organisation or commercial organisation, but social organisation as well. And that it was the West Europeans, including, by the way, the Romans, really, when you look at it, who were best able to, the Romans came with a lot of inventions, concrete and so on. And their engineering innovations in terms of those aqueducts and the like were certainly, considering the time, they were super advanced technology in its day. And a lot of those innovations that the Romans, engineering innovations the Romans came up with, weren't really matched for another 1,000+ years. Now there were things in between, like the construction of those massive cathedrals in Western Europe, and the flying buttresses, and there were innovations, but nowhere near to the flood of innovations and inventions that came along. Now, excuse me, I think that sort of level of invention innovation was closely tied only to one group of people. Now you can make various arguments, such as there are other areas where there was great political repression, or where there was mass illiteracy, or constant warfare, which diverted and sapped energies and may otherwise have gone into. You can look at all of those things, and climate, or whatever the case may be. Some areas in the world were very hot and promotes lethargy, for example, whereas colder climates and very seasonal weather, creates an attitude of industry and conscientious. I mean, you can make all those various arguments, but it still comes back to if you subtracted the white inventions, the white European or Europeans that went to, say, the United States, for example, if you subtract the white European inventions from the sum total of world technology and technical progress, then we'd be living in a fairly bleak sort of landscape these days. We'd still be hand to mouth, serf peasants tilling the fucking land and so on. So I think it's we need to look at evolution, I think, in those terms, and those most capable of producing those things should be at the apex because they produce the most, create the most, and deliver the most common benefit to the most number of people. And if you use those measuring sticks, then white people sort of scrub up fairly well. Now, the globalists, because white people get in the way of the globalist project, those damn pesky white people, they want, free and fair elections, and they want, independent courts and rule of law and codified law, those fucking assholes, we've got to get rid of them. So that it's very, the globalists are funding mass propaganda campaigns to make white people all look bad and so on, simply because they want to get them out of the way, because they interfere and hinder the globalist project, but turning us all into medieval serfs again. But this concept of if we deny resources to the other group, then we've somehow achieved something. And this is the very limited aims, if you like, of the the activists in race and gender and in trans and so on. Again, all globalist funded and scripted and so on. But if we can just stop white men from having things, having anything, whether it's influence or power or money, if we can just stop that, then we will have more. And so stopping white men from having it, that's it. Now you look at that and say black reparations and all these sorts of things. We just want to stop them from having so much. We want to stop them from having such a voice. We want to stop them from, the white people, having, making decisions. And once we've done that, then we've got a fair and equitable society. So they assert, the ideologues assert. But the reality is that once you take white people out of that equation, then all the wealth, that's the new wealth that's being made, will all be gone. And this was the tragic mistake that primal societies made. Well, we'll just steal what the other guys got and we'll be good to go. Or we'll deny them those resources and everything will be fine. Not realizing that the resources aren't naturally occurring. They're occurring through organisation, innovation, invention. And that's very different from the primal attitudes you could apply to just taking someone else's land or taking people as slaves, which is how the ancient Africans and Indians and all these other societies viewed the world, still do, by the way. So this would be a seismic shift in new wealth creation. Now, some are saying, well, new wealth creation is bullshit anyway, because if you look at nanotechnology, that'll just 3D printing, nanotechnology, everything will just be made like that. So invention and innovation just aren't needed. And so who cares? So we're getting rid of a class of people, the inventors, the innovators, the organizational experts. We're getting rid of a class of people that really we're not going to need and won't need and so on. So who cares? But I don't see it that way at all. I see it that those people are still needed as much as ever. And the idea of AI, nanotechnology, these sorts of 3D printing is going to replace all of that, including organizational capacity. That's bullshit. It just isn't going to happen. So what we're doing is we're in fact returning to a far more primal stage. If the globalists have their way and if current trends continue, we're returning to a primal stage that existed before the era of innovation and invention and new wealth creation. And that would subtract from, in sum and in total, that would subtract from our quality of life, our wealth, and our ability to exist and engaging meaningful lives. But it will mean we have an elite of merit capability, not an elite of affirmative action, PhD black lesbians or something. That's again going back, I think, to the days of a non-meritorious society where just denying the other people something is considered an achievement. But those are my views, and I'll be looking forward to seeing your views below. You've been with Tacitus today, and thank you for listening.